Let's see how Scott Jennings handles these Democrat buffoons. Let's go.
Well, some people would argue that he's given illegal orders, namely several federal judges. One just in the last hour or two put out a ruling that his deployment of the National Guard to D.C. is no longer legal. So, but we can have a political debate on that. Scott, you and I are friends, and I was moved by a lot of your comments after Charlie Kirk's assassination about how the political rhetoric of the day, you could draw a through line between the political rhetoric of the day and the political violence that resulted. And I agree with you. I agreed with you then. This, if that upset you, this should upset you, because this president said something that some of his supporters may hear as a call to action. I don't know. I don't think that what they said rose to that level. I think what they said was simply just restating what is in federal law. And in this culture, we all, Democrat, Republican, and I know you agree with this, all have an obligation to turn the temperature down when it comes to rhetoric that could be seen as violent.
I agree with you that political violence is wrong in all cases. I abhor political violence. And I can only point you back to what the president's direct representative, Caroline Leavitt, said today when she was directly asked about this. She said, no, that's not what the president was saying. And so I wholeheartedly agree with you that we all have a responsibility to denounce political violence. As far as I know, there hasn't been any political violence today. And you have the White House press secretary saying there should not be any political violence, and no one should take it that way. So I think what Caroline did today was actually quite important when she answered a direct question about it.
And the question of their potential arrest and trial as distinct from a potential call for violence, do you see that as something that is legitimate in the face of members of Congress making a video that they put on social media?
Look, I don't think any members of Congress are going to be arrested, but I don't think this should take away from the debate about whether what they did is responsible. They know better, and in my opinion, they are simply making videos that are outrageous and pushing the envelope to satisfy a radical base that demands their Democratic leaders to do kind of things like that these days.
So the guy sitting next to Scott is saying that Trump's response is somehow raising the temperature, and that Trump saying that might encourage his supporters to take things into their own hands. But we all know the truth. Trump didn't escalate anything. He didn't invent a punishment. He didn't threaten anyone. He literally quoted existing law. That's it. That's the story. And as is always the case, there's been zero violence from conservatives over this. No threats, no mobs, no angry crowds. But the panel pretends the danger is coming from Trump's side, not from the senators who told troops to break the chain of command. That's the deflection. That's the misdirection. This doesn't come as any surprise to any of you, but Scott's the only one at that table grounded in reality. The rest of them are bending over backwards to avoid saying the obvious. These senators were reckless, not Donald Trump. Here's the bigger picture. Every time Democrats say turn down the temperature, it's always aimed at conservatives, but they never apply that standard to themselves. Look at the last decade. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, conservatives prayed for his family. When George Floyd died, cities burned for months, arson, looting, destruction, even killings, and Democrat leaders couldn't bring themselves to condemn it clearly. Some even encouraged it. This argument has been settled for a long time now. Political violence in this country overwhelmingly comes from the left, but they're the ones lecturing everyone else about rhetoric. So when liberals say turn down the temperature, it's just another way of saying both sides are guilty of this, and a way to shift responsibility away from the senators and toward Donald Trump. But the truth is simple. One side is playing political games, and the other side actually respects order, discipline, and the rule of law. That's why this moment matters. You can't run a military or a country when politicians casually tell troops to ignore their commander-in-chief. Scott is the only person in that studio focusing on the real stakes here. Discipline, national security, and the people who actually serve. We need fewer political stunts and a whole lot more respect for the men and women in uniform.